Bruin was taking a semester off from Laugh Little College, a state school 3 hours north of the Higher Falls coffee shop. He was a communications major, but absolutely hated it, hence the semester off. His job at the coffee shop wasn't intended to be more than just a way to earn some cash while figuring out his next moves. But he was surprised to find he had actually started to feel like, hey, maybe it was his purpose. What does he know? Why not? Susan had no idea he was thinking this, and she would have been kind of mortified and surprised to discover he was having this epiphany. As we've established, and I'm sorry to keep saying it because I'm not trying to harp on it, but he wasn't like the most helpful employee, but everyone loved him. I mean, mostly. If he had been paying any attention at all to a small section on the floor right by his feet when he was washing dishes the other day, he would have noticed that 2 small donut holes had become sentient and then vanished in a cloud of pink electric smoke. But Bruin didn't see it. Nobody saw it. Nobody knew it even happened, besides the donut ball holes things. Anyway, sorry. I'm realizing throughout this story there's sometimes donut holes, sometimes donut balls. I'm not keeping it straight, and I apologize for that. I didn't notice this discrepancy until right now. But I guess as Maud from Harold and Maude says from our universe, consistency is not really a human trait. And, I am only human after all. Well, in our world. In their world, I'm an amorphous mist. But over here in our world, I'm a human known as Toasty. And I guess I just get mixed up on whether they're donut balls or donut holes. But let's just get back to the important part of this, because that's not. Really, the important part is that whole vortex thing. Like, what? Nobody saw our donut ball heroes getting zapped seemingly out of existence. Nobody there knew of the hidden vortex lurking within Higher Falls coffee shop. But you do. You know. Sadly, there's nothing you can do about that knowledge. Not at least in any way that could have helped Bruin this day. But he didn't need your help. The vortex found him. And in fact, had always been looking for him. It lured him into the coffee shop by making him hate his communication classes at Laugh Little College. It was guiding a pull that brought him to live back with his parents so that he'd need to find work there, given that the small town of Higher Falls had very little options for him. There was, of course, Hank's Hardware next door, but they were never hiring. It was a true family business run by Hank and his wife Thelma and staffed by his 3 sons, Cameron, Chuck, and Michael. Next to Hank's was a nonprofit used clothing shop, Community Goods. It's mostly volunteer run, but there were staff positions, but they were already full. I'll spare you all the details of Higher Falls and speed this up. I don't know why we're getting in the weeds here. I don't know. I just want to share a few more things about it. Real quick, there's a restaurant called Happy Days. It's a retro 70s looking diner that Bruin applied to be a part-time waitstaff for, but just never heard back. There's a building that would be in our timeline known as something like a church or a synagogue or a mosque, but in Bruin's reality, all those concepts are just one thing, with designated buildings for universal worship and community well-being. The one in Higher Falls was called The Landing. There's a food pantry and rooms for those needing shelter. There's more about this. Bruin's reality, all humans have universal basic income. It's not quite enough to live off of, but it helps make sure humans are not frequently struggling with housing or anything like that. And if so, they have a place that they can land. If you want to know more about the politics and the way that Higher Falls and its universe is shaped, because it is a one world order kind of universe, so, or at least that planet in the universe is. So check out the chapter titled "Just an Ordinary Day" if you have not yet. Honestly, I think it might be my favorite chapter in this whole. I could talk about this universe forever. Okay, and finally, to kind of wrap up what the options were for Bruin, there was also a local grocery store and a marketplace that sold produce, but Bruin couldn't possibly apply there because his childhood crush worked there, and the anxiety of working anywhere near her just was too much for him, so he avoided it. And anyway, there's other things in Higher Falls, but that isn't relevant right now. Again, if you're interested, head over to the chapter titled "Just Another Day." What you need to focus on, come on, focus here. There is a portal in the coffee shop that nobody knows about. And Bruin inadvertently just stepped right on into it. But as you and I both know, it was inadvertent on Bruin's part, totally intentional on the portal's part. And meanwhile, literally no one there knows why this is happening in the coffee shop. Even the scientists who are causing it have no clue it's happening. But that's just because the one world government that I kind of mentioned earlier, and again, there's more about in the Just an Ordinary Day chapter. I did not mention in that chapter that they have secret programs. There's so much about this world. The world government has secret programs in pretty much every field imaginable, and far beneath the surface of the Higher Falls coffee shop resided a quantum unscaling detangler nicknamed Cud. Essentially, it was what was responsible for the occasional portal opening in the coffee shop, but only when the conditions were absolutely just right. There had to be static electricity in the sky, and today, they weren't just brewing up hot coffee inside, but also a big storm was brewing overhead. And the engineers at Cud had been running an experiment that involved lemons. That's what it takes. There needs to be static in the sky and lemons in the experiment running down in Cud. If it weren't for that, the portal would have never appeared on this day. But not only were the conditions just right, Bruin was standing in the exact right spot to be blasted with a magenta lightning bolt that is like this orb that consumed him faster than anyone could have seen. "Bee," Susan called from the back office. "Hey, Bee, I need your help back here. Could you come back here? Bee?" Susan rolled her eyes, half smiling to herself, assuming she was going to find Bee totally mesmerized by the dials on the oven again, but Bee was nowhere to be found. And when Bruin came to, he was lying on a dirt ground, silver boots facing his head. He heard voices. Okay, this is where you're just going to have to deal with my bad impressions of some, British knights, okay? And just some, marketplace dwellers. It's going to have a slightly bad English accent. Okay, so just deal. Okay. "What magic is this?" "I know it's not. I was standing at my shop and he just appeared. I swear." A silver boot slightly tapped him. Bruin sat up and looked around as murmurs from the crowd around him continued. It appeared as though he was in a busy medieval marketplace. There were wooden shops and stalls selling things like breads and pies and apples, and all the shoppers were pretty much frozen still, except for their gossiping mouths and pointing fingers. There was a brown horse with a knight in full silver stationed just a few steps away, and immediately above him stood another knight with his horse behind him held in a lead by his hand. The standing knight, Gawain, reached out his hand. "Easy up, then," he said as the knight on the horse, Agravain, shook his head as Bruin was lifted to his feet. "Gawain, why wouldst thou offer him your hand? Thou hast not ascertained his intentions." Agravain pulled his sword and pointed at Bruin's chest. "Aye, pray tell thou truest intentions, or feel the heat of my blade." Gawain pulled Bruin back and stood between them. "He is but a young lad. Let him speak, Agravain." Gawain dropped his eye mask and glared at Agravain as he continued. "Dost thou knowest not what becomes of ye? Shall ye injure an innocent once more?" Gawain turns his back coldly on Agravain as he drops his sword and removes his helmet completely, and smiles warmly at Bruin, who is having trouble breathing at this point. Bruin is dressed in blue jeans and a black polo shirt, nothing too wild by our standards, but certainly sticks out among the marketplace goers, which they were all still watching the drama unfold, but at this point, some movement had started. They were starting to bustle about a bit more. Gawain extends his metal-clad hand, and Bruin shakes it. "Welcome thee to King Arthur's court. Merlin has been awaiting thee." "Thou knowest that not," Agravain pleaded. But Agravain was wrong. Merlin did expect Bruin today. It had been prophesied that a stranger from a strange land would appear on this day. Agravain knew that, but was rage-filled with suspicion about pretty much everything in life. Gawain, on the other hand, if anything, did have a history of being the opposite, overly trusting, but in this case, clearly, it's just Bruin. There's nothing to fear. He literally has no clue where he is or why or how he even got there. And to top it off, he's never heard of King Arthur's court because he's from a totally different universe where the knowledge of that was never learned. So he's just full on in shock. "Please, give us thy name," asks Gawain. Bruin. At that, trumpeters begin to play.